Welcome to Tuesday's Ask Me Anything. Students loading up. Just make sure everything's getting connected okay. Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, golden. Welcome. Part of Ask Me Anything is just a no pressure, no sales pitch. Come and ask a realtor anything about real estate. This week we're going to talk about HOAs, good, the bad, and the ugly. I've got this session today, and we've got another session Friday morning, 9 a.m. And these I will see them and post them as real or video on the various platforms. Best viewing is Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn because you get a big full widescreen. But Instagram works as well, just your little smaller on the vertical. So as we get going, ask any questions you have. Any of the chats that will come through to my end. There's a little bit of a delay between the streams, so you should all get to your question. Questions. Okay. HOAs. I'm sure you all have an opinion of an HOA. You've probably heard good, bad, and ugly. Um, thought it would be cool to talk through some stories, some different experiences, process that I go through with clients when they are buying a home in an HOA, uh, and wherever else the conversation goes. Fun fact, I didn't realize HOAs actually originated from private land covenants in the 18th and 19th century, so they have been around for quite a while. Um, I see uh, a lot of purpose to the HOA, a lot of purpose for HOAs to be able to address hyper local, hyper specific needs or communities or anything else that's unique like that. Um, so they have a purpose. It's also so similar with HOAs of what cities do with ordinances. The difference is cities are generally run by elected officials. Although there's usually some sort of election process with an HOA, you're usually limited to those people who own property in that community, that those are your options for president, vice president, people to do things and make choices. That can be kind of risky, and that's where we get into, Karens and Chads and all the good stuff. Your basic foundation of an HOA is just managing financials, managing the area, the community, and making sure things are maintained to a set standard. That set standard, though, is different for each and every one of those communities. Um, there's a big community around here called Daybreak. If you're not from Utah, if you are from Utah, you know where Daybreak is and been there a few times. They've got all lakes, the rivers, the trails, everything, all homes look very similar. And HOA is a perfect example for something, or that's a good demonstration of an HOA. That's even a complicated version where you have an HOA within an HOA that having that set look, that set feel, lawns need to be mowed, workers need to be consistent. That's a lot of the background and purposes of HOAs. Uh, I personally am not a fan of HOAs myself. I would never limit one. Uh, I like more freedoms. A lot of people feel like non-HOA areas, you're dealing with some neighbors who maybe your their lawn or paint their door bright pink. I'm good with bright pink. That's fantastic. People think, oh, that pulls the property value down. It doesn't. But they don't look for color in establishing the price of a home. So I just like freedom. I take care of my yard, the flower beds. I have roses that are like 10 foot tall from this noticing. Um, that's kind of another example of each ways you have to have some plants or bushes. Uh, I love picking flowers, plants that I want. I love them getting tall and a little unruly because they just look absolutely beautiful. Um, just to go through, tell me your experiences of these ways. Um, the value that and kind of what I talk to clients about when they are looking at a home and potentially want to be in an HOA or considering not being in an HOA. Uh, what are they looking for as far as consistency in the neighborhood, uh, freedoms to sort of speak to if you want to do paint any color. When you walk out your front door, what do you want to see? And if that answer is very structured, consistent, the manicured lawns, all sorts of things, and it's probably good fit for you. You have this enjoyment, you start your home, you you feel like you're in the same place. You didn't kind of work into a different area and think, gosh, these neighbors need to pick the lawn or take care of their stuff and things like that. If you're looking at a person that loves a variety, that if it's actually probably not for you. Um, let's see what other good HOA questions we're going through. So daybreak, so you asked about explaining that to levels of HOA daybreak. So daybreak has kind of a master community HOA that is the entirety of daybreak. And then they have another HOA that is for specific pockets of space inside of daybreak. Total, I think there's probably maybe 10 or so HOAs. Daybreak is one HOA. Some have one of the others as well. Some only have the one. The one, the big main is kind of just uh, big rules about how close buildings can be together, allocating enough screen space, roads, big infrastructure stuff. So the HOA is, oh, this is a specific community for maybe more affluent group that we want all homes to have this style, they need to have this color painting, they need to have these type of lines, these colors, windows. They have a lot of like colonial homes that they break in certain areas. And that's what's driving us some of those HOAs. Indicating that you feel. For those of you who've lived in Utah as well, if you have City, City is another example at a city level. They have some kind of essentially like a master to anyway. But you see there are buildings that cover like where you see where else it's a ski chalet building is inside of uh, that's another example of kind of HOA not standard when you come out and look this community and what it looks like across our city. I wanted to have that theme of all these little Swiss chalet homes and uh, hotels and everything to kind of look and vibe together. Horror stories, daybreak, or not daybreak, sorry, page police. Um, Financials. It's a tough one for me. It's like having somebody else in charge of your checkbook. I don't love that. Uh, if you have good folks, it's not going to change at any time. That's why it's kind of tough. Sometimes having people in control of finances is amazing. As an example, we talked a little bit on our last job about a client who maybe wanted to buy a cabin. The cabin actually was in it. They had developed an HOA for the area, and that HOA was meant to take care of the snow plowing, the dirt mounds, also things like the water system. They had a well and a holding tank. And they found out that there was a lot of contaminants actually in the water, like heavy metals. I think there might have been some bacterial issues in the holding tank. So to fix that, since hey, that's your water, you have to pay your portion to fix whatever needs to be fixed. When you own a home, it's nice that you're confined to the property. And hopefully anything you have to do isn't crazy expensive. But this could be, this whole thing could require digging it out, underground, rebuilding it, buying a new one. Things that be $20,000. And if you share that cost across the units, some people easily are getting $500 bill, sometimes you're getting $2,000 bill. Uh, Rows of townhomes, time comes that they need a new roof. That's usually an HOA expense as well as that exterior stuff. Roofs are not cheap. Sometimes for those buildings, it's $100,000, and sometimes the building only has 6 units in it. You're paying a pretty hefty chunk for that new roof. Some insurances have similar charges for special assessments like that. Uh, Similarly, that you're talking one way or another, whether it's your insurance premium potentially going for anything, you pay it directly, lots of stuff like that. Um, so you buy an HOA, there are a few steps part of the due diligence process that you get to investigate the HOA to make sure it's a good fit. That it's not maybe filed for bankruptcy or something that you want to avoid. The first thing to look at is the financials, which you talked about. They're required to provide um, last year's financials and their budgets, like how did they do financially funded, current year-to-date financials, actuals, which is funded. They usually provide a current year budget for the rest of the year, sometimes the following year what the budget looks like. This gives you some good opportunity to look through and see how many people are paying dues, people paying dues late, or are people delinquent in paying their HOA dues. It also should tell you fines and violations. How much are they charging? If you see a smaller community that has maybe 10 properties and homes, and you see a huge number in fines, I mean, somebody is out there just every 5 seconds, somebody is fine. Personally, that's not a neighborhood I want to live in. Um, if it's a huge community like Daybreak, and you see like two or three, okay, that's probably to be expected. Uh, that's a good indicator of do you have a care neighborhood? Do you have somebody on the corner who has nothing better to do with their time? You need to check out all the fine violations. See, question about finances. Okay, So the question is about dues and those people not paying dues. You'll also usually see a category of late fees. Um, this can indicate a few different things that people aren't paying their dues. You have owners that have taken off and are managing reading it's maybe they just took it off and moved it and pay for now. It could be that people disagree with how the HOA is being run. So you have like a vice president or a little bit of committee. Those will from the HOA make the decisions. What's the plan? What do we want to improve? What do we maintain? And that's the way that people show their disdain. It's like not paying your taxes if you don't look at it a certain way. They didn't pay their HOA dues. Yes, there are late fees that are fine. You're required to pay it. I always tell clients if you were planning to join an HOA, buy an HOA, get on the board, be a part of those conversations, those processes, those votings, so that you can really kind of guide and indicate what's coming and make sure it's a fit for you. And that you're just sitting in the sidelines and just giving the projects come at you. You have a little bit of control in that way. Let's see. The big thing with finances is reserves. So it's just like a savings account for all of us. You know, we have enough money that if we quit our jobs, we have 6 months to be able to get a new job and not be just out of the street broke. HOAs are required to have a minimum. A lot of them have a lot more than that, which is great. They, a lot of the analysis around reserves is to start an HOA strong with a lot of reserves as much as possible. It's going to be harder and harder and harder as you goes on to build up those reserves. Always you're going to lost money on. You may have a park area that is part of your HOA and you want to plant some trees, you want to plant some flowers, that's what starts out. Then you have a new roof come up and you only had $40,000 in reserves. Keep these in there, so you can only spend 30. The roof is 100,000. So you've got to just count for the rest. I've seen some HOAs that have like $1 million in reserves, and that is not unheard of because these HOAs can sometimes have 400 units. So they have to have enough reserves to cover something catastrophic. They are an entity just like a business. Should be run like a business. And they can get sued just because the hard part of suing your own HOA is that you're kind of suing yourself. Any judgment is not the HOA, which the HOA costs are still like members, so you're going to be paying your portion. So it's tough to go down the route and sue yourself. um, I sued it actually in condo when the very first property when I was 22, and it was in an HOA. And I found out pretty quick that pretty much there was the president and vice president, and they were doing anything. This was a community of 20 units. It was two buildings that faced each other with a courtyard in the middle. And in front, by the street, it was a big grass area. Parking lot between the grass area and buildings, and behind the buildings was the parking lot. And that this was on 2 or 3 acres, not huge. Might even be a bit bigger than I'm thinking. Um, kept noticing things just, the gate fix the um, light fixture wall went out and never replaced it in the courtyard. Noticing things like that deteriorating time, and finally got a hold and started to talk and get involved in the board. And that realization, like, oh, it's happening. Nobody's showing up. Nobody cares. The complex is owned majority by about four people. Were investors and about these three, those two, and those two, and these three, and a handful of individual owners like I was. Uh, so they were still managing, trying to do what they could. I think the owner, the main president and vice president in Utah, in another state, it's super difficult to red flag because you can't see from day to day what's actually going on. You can see that gate equipment needs to be fixed. You can't see that lights out. Uh, we finally started to make a teeny progress, but we moved since the president was out of state, moved the daily responsibilities to a property management company. The first one we went to was the biggest mistake ever. They just nickel and dimed in terms of serving. Uh, they had all these extra reserves and these literally created users that we were so worried about that. So we decided to stay in for real and we got to the company. That was actually pretty good. Uh, they weren't yeah, nickel and diamond. They were able to have conversations. They knew what was going on. There was like one main person who represented our HOA. So the other was like a larger company. So we called somebody else because of the way we talked about before. And on. Finally got some good progress. Got some good backing. Got things established. Uh, at this point, I had been at I had all the party for like a year, maybe two, and just constantly felt that battle of fighting other people who are the other owners to, to bring up standards, to clean up the place, to not have it feel like a slum hole. I find it just like, I'm good. I need to get out of here. It's got that realization you're at a job for so long, you keep trying to get a promotion, it just keeps not happening, and you doesn't care, leadership doesn't care. It's time to move on. I ended up selling that place and doing what's called a 1031 exchange, since I had been renting it for a while as well. And bought a property out here in Kearns. So I took that money, deferred the taxes for the sale, the capital gains, and all that, moved all of that funds into another property. Uh, yeah, that's a good HOA story. I can write a couple of them. Let's see what else I see. If I did ever have to get into an HOA, okay, this is a good question. If I ever had to find an HOA, what would I want it to look like? I would be maybe okay with a very minimal HOA. So there's some HOAs where they do, cover everything. We talk about the lines that you have, the color on your door, the type of work of the home, the style of the home, the plans. It can get super, super particular. There are also some HOAs that only do things like snow removal or maintain parking lot. Uh, that's it. I'm okay with those. Generally, how you can know relatively quick what type of HOA you be getting into is the HOA price. Those ones that just cover snow removal generally is $100 so it's not a huge expense. Um, Sometimes they're even like $55 a month, and it's super cheap. Those HOAs where there's a lot going on and they're managing every little bit, every little aspect, those are generally your 200, 300, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, $2,000 a month HOA fees on top of your mortgage. It's go crazy. What other good questions do we have coming in? Can an HOA be uh, essentially disbanded? Is kind of the word. Yes, there will be. So each HOA will have what is called CCNRs, covenants, conditions, covenants, restrictions. I feel like we're going to see a little bit of wording. CCNRs is kind of the filings basic business structure. Uh, this is this will have language in there about how to decide to like shut a business down essentially. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Yep. Uh, Oftentimes it's going to be a majority vote, uh, some sort of plan to manage or pass along these duties later, but it can be done. There's a lot of places that I'll look up their kind of history and see that they were started as an HOA, and then the owners decided we don't want an HOA, so they closed it off. Definitely can be done. Um, the other things I encourage folks to look at when they are potentially buying in an HOA is to reach out to the HOA board, the presidents, the other members, the other board members, and ask them what it's like. One of the other documents they're required to provide is the most recent meeting minutes. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of what are they talking about, what's important, what's the current issues. Um, you can also see who's attending, who's at that meeting, how many people are engaged. Um, Having those conversations with the HOA board, you get a good sense of what is it going to be like. Let's see, what are the other HOA requirements? Budget financials, owner statement, last minutes, um, rules and regulations. That's the other key thing they're supposed to provide you. Now, we talked a little bit about CCNRs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. These are usually the operating pieces for the business, and it usually covers kind of the bigger, broader things. Things like how close buildings can be to each other, how much space needs to be in the front of the yard, the structure of the president, the vice president, the treasurer, what are their responsibilities, very, very high level stuff. Usually from that, there's either a bylaws document or rules and regulations, for lack of better words, that will tell you all the other things that you could potentially be fined for. Dog droppings is a common one. If you leave those in common areas and somebody sees it that you didn't pick it up, they're going to fine you to have to go clean that up or force you to go clean that up. There's usually also a first offense, a second offense, a third, a late fee. So those fines and violations can add up quickly. But again, taking the time to review through all of those and see, is this somewhere that I'm comfortable living? Am I, because Because buying into the home that's in an HOA, you're agreeing to abide by those HOA rules. Yeah. Fun one that I ran into recently was I had a client who was buying in a neighborhood, and it was a newer neighborhood, so we were trying to figure out like what is the HOA like? Try to answer that question. Like, sure, you can call the president, you can do a little bit of that too, but what about all the other people? And I realized I knew somebody. This is the fun part of real estate. I knew somebody who lived in that neighborhood. And so I reached out to them, and they provided the Facebook group for that essentially HOA in that area. This is a great way to kind of snoop around, stalk, carefully stalk, if you would, but to see what are all the comments people are making about the area. What are people upset about? Are kids coming through at night breaking mailboxes? Is it pretty quiet? The other good stuff is things like community. Are there I helped a client buy in an HOA recently, and on their budget, they literally have a budget item for like a year, every year summer party. And they do it just like a block party. They get out some grills, make some hamburgers, get a bouncy house, have some karaoke, like just have a good time community. And it was honestly the first time I've ever seen that in an HOA, and just thought, you know what? That's actually pretty cool to step away from all the rules and enforcements and have some money set aside to have a party. That's fantastic. Um, yeah, so looking in that group, they were able to find things like a block party and hey, for Halloween this year, these neighbors have said they're going to do this. These neighbors have said they're going to do this. They actually sent me a photo this year that they were hanging out in their driveway. They had a fire pit. They had looked like a drink bar for kids, obviously. So there was, orange juice and fruit punch, and I'm sure some soda. Um, but just super fun and unique, and definitely a cool neighborhood for folks to be in. Things like that. That's where you want to find the good spots. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Different HOA fees. So you're going to have a main monthly, usually, sometimes quarterly, sometimes annually HOA fee, late fees, violation fines, all that kind of stuff. The other one that you'll see commonly is they usually call it like a reinvestment fee. It's essentially an ownership transfer fee. So when you buy or sell, uh, you have to pay a percentage of the purchase price of the home to the HOA to have them change the name from John Smith to Mary Peterson, we'll say as an example, um, which obviously doesn't take that much to do to make those couple changes in their system. But it gives them an opportunity to take a chunk and put it in reserves, take a chunk, put it in reserves. That's what they should be doing with it at least. Um, there are some that don't have this fee at all. There are some that this fee is huge. Like like sometimes I think I've seen the sum at like 2 and 3%. We're talking like $10,000 in some of those cases to just for that fee. Daybreak has another fee that's kind of interesting. They don't want part of their structure is they don't want people buying and selling, buying and selling, buying and selling of like the same property. They want a little more consistency. So they have in there that if you buy a property in Daybreak and you sell it within a year, you have to pay a $10,000 fine. Uh, Great. If you're going to do that, you want to cover it, fantastic. But for most people, that's a lot of money to just throw away. Um, but things like that encourage that behavior to not buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. Yeah, those are the main fees you're going to see as an HOA. Special assessments, we talked about that, where an HOA is deciding they have to make some improvement or build up reserves. So they have to charge the members to get money because that's their only source of income. Let's see, got any other questions? How to find the CCNRs for my HOA? So a couple different ways. Usually the HOA has them and can just provide them. They should have them. Uh, if if not, they can be looked up through county records, like public records, that's similar to like deeds that are filed on properties. So they will be in that process. If you've purchased a home or are selling it, usually your title company will pull up the last submitted copies of those CCNRs. They usually don't have the bylaws or the rules and regulations because that changes so frequently, but they will have the CCNRs. So you could even look back on any emails that you've received through purchasing the home uh, to find those CCNRs. But the HOA should give them to you as well. They're required to. It's like working for a business and them not giving you a W-2. Like they have to do that. Mm, questions got. So some good HOAs. I feel like the Daybreak HOA is pretty well managed. What is difficult for that HOA when you buy part of, again, that due diligence process of reviewing all the HOA stuff is the title company will likely pull back every copy, every version of the CCNRs from the inception of that property. So that way you have the full history. What that looks like for Daybreak is about 1,000 pages of we made an amendment, we changed this. Now we made another amendment, we changed this. We made another amendment, we changed this. So much of it is identical page for page, but then there's a couple changes, a couple small tweaks. But if you don't have that full history, you don't know what that looks like. Um, yeah, the clients that helped buy Daybreak this year, easily 1,000 pages of documents they had to flip through. And it's tough because you want to just kind of cruise through it and find the juicy stuff. But if you do that, you might miss other things that are potentially deal breakers for you. So you got to take a little bit of time and go through those. It might not be a read every word. That's at your own discretion. Um, but going through and being aware of what's in there and what's got you to today is important. Again, it's because you're agreeing to those rules and terms and everything as part of buying the home. I had another one in that newer community that I was talking about. Theirs wasn't 1,000 pages, were 600 pages. And it was crazy because it was like an HOA that had only been around for maybe 5 years. But again, it was all the amendments, all the adjustments, the the land changed names from a farmer to this developer, back and forth, and all that got tracked through different documents. Um, so yeah, they had about 500 pages to go through. Um, I had an HOA that I was selling a home in this year, and the HOA financials, rules, last meeting minutes, everything was 5 pages. Super hands-off HOA. Um, the main stuff was just 5 pages. The CCNRs I think were 10, so it wasn't actually too bad at all. Just gives you that comparison of different types of HOAs, different expectations and experiences. Um, Property managers. That's a good question. It's tough to find good property managers. Even as an investor, when you have a home that you're renting out, there are not very many good property managers. Some of you know my story. I have a couple rental properties, and this last year, the property manager I've been working with for like 5 years took off with $35,000 of mine. We didn't get paid November rent, December rent, and then he closed up shop, and he ended up keeping the deposits from the properties and last month's rent for the properties. So like 4 hits. Obviously, November, December, that hit right away and was painful because we still have to pay the mortgage. Um, Last month's rent, that one hit um, on one of the tenants because they turned over, and then their deposit. We had to figure out how to kind of put the funds for those two things. Uh, Luckily, my other couple tenants are hanging around. So someday when they do decide to depart, I'll have to cop up the money for their last month's rent and for their deposit again. Um, Property managers for a complex are equally as difficult. Um, Again, one that I worked with this year that I was selling a property in. The inspection came back with a couple questions, which to be expected when you're looking at a home is where is the water shut off? Because there's not one for the unit itself. It was like this townhouse situation that was older. Um, and when we, first of all, it was super difficult to even communicate with the HOA. You could not call them on the phone. They would not take phone calls. It was managed by this management company. They said all questions, everything have to go through this portal where you type your message and send in a request. Uh, and I can't remember the exact steps of what we went through and responses, but the first question was like, "Where's the water shut off for the building?" It's in the utility closet. No, it's not. We're here. We're looking at it. You obviously don't know what you're speaking about. Uh, and then it was, well, I don't know. We'll investigate and get back to you. And it's like we're at a time crunch for this deal. We need to answer these questions promptly, and otherwise, my seller, the buyer is potentially going to walk away if we can't even answer these questions. Um, Come to find out, the water shut off for the building. There's two places. Part of the question of this was a pressure regulator because the pressure was pretty high in this unit. So, because it's a weird townhouse shaped thing, the water shut off for this unit is in the basement of that unit. Yeah, basement inside. And so is the pressure regulator. I think it runs 3 or 4, 5 units. There's also outside, kind of like the manholes you see in the park strips a lot in Utah, was a shut off for that would also shut off the whole building. Um, just happenstance, we had kind of deducted that like these specific units, based on the layout and all this, that likely that's where the water shut off was. So the happenstance was I was at this unit that we were selling, just doing a quick tidy up. As people come in and out, usually some tracks some dirt in on their feet. So I was doing like a quick sweep, and I saw that the unit that we were thinking the water shutoff was in, there was some folks there doing construction. It looked like they were remodeling it. So I just went over and I said, "Hey, weird question. I'm representing this guy selling this place. We think the water shutoff is in the basement of this unit. Can I go in the basement and look real quick?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, totally." Go down there, found it, shut it off, and I'm on the phone with like somebody else that was helping me in the other unit. They're like, "Yep, the water's shutting off." I'm like, "Okay, perfect." So this answers the question of where is this? Um, I think after that, the buyers put their own shut off in their own unit so that they could control it. Or if something, broke or leaked. I can only imagine, either somebody elderly or disabled, if they were in that unit and the water, uh, the hose to the dishwasher burst. Not uncommon. Hopefully, not very often, but it can happen. And you got water just going, literally a geyser coming out of your dishwasher area. Where is the shutoff? You're frantically looking through the utility closet, looking through anywhere in the home, and at this point, like gallons per minute is just pouring out. You're trying to call the HOA. Sorry, we don't take any questions via the phone. You have to submit them on the portal. We'll go back to you in 24 to 48 hours. Like, no. Um, to have to finally, did you call the water company and have them come out? That's maybe a couple hours that you've had water just running, flooding your basement. And even if it wasn't somebody who was elderly or disabled, just like maybe somebody able-bodied, you'd have no clue where to go or what to do and just be stuck. Um, Joys of HOAs. All right, we're coming up on our time here. We've got a few more minutes. Let's see what other questions we've got. Difficult people in HOAs, yes. Um, I'm familiar with an HOA and a client I worked with. Um, there's some opportunity for HOAs to tie in with FHA funding approvals. So essentially, if you've got a complex that most of the buildings are owner occupied, it can make the community fall under FHA guidelines. So this is great because FHA is the like number one biggest volume of loans that most people get. So by marketing a property and saying that it would qualify for an FHA loan attracts a ton of buyers. If you're not able to do that, you're taking a big chunk of buyers and just saying, sorry, I can't sell it to you. Um, so this complexes that have to maintain this status with HUD, um, Housing Urban Development, government entity, saying that they are still like FHA certified. They have to just provide something simple saying, X percentage are owner occupied, X percentage of the units are investor owned. Um, part of it is that FHA focuses on, home buyers occupying homes. So if most of the complex is investors, they're not looking to do loans there. That's just not the program they're supporting. So we were talking with the president of this HOA before we were going to sell, like months before, saying, "Hey, we know that there are this many units, this many are owner occupied, and this many are rented. we should be able to qualify for this FHA status. You can literally look it up on HUD's website. We look it up right now and we see that our complex has expired. Can you go through the steps to get this certified again? And we were trying to approach it as this is a huge opportunity for values for everybody, because if we can attract a good, valuable buyer that wants to do an FHA loan, the property is more valuable. If they can't do an FHA loan, the properties are going to be less valuable, and then the comparables truly will start bringing down the value. Um, and it was just absolutely pulling teeth trying to work with them. Um, they didn't care. They didn't want to do anything. I'm glad the owner is no longer part of that HOA and doesn't have to deal with them anymore. Um, they never did anything. We luckily found a conventional buyer, um, but stuff like that. There's so much behind the scenes that if it's not maintained and upkept, it's a tough thing to. I want to sell next week or next month, but I have to. But the HOA has to go through the certification process, and I'm likely not going to be able to sell unless they do that. Um, Part of why I always recommend get involved in the HOA, um, make sure things are moving in good directions and things are getting done. All right, well, I think we are at time. Uh, Thank you all for joining. And our next hangout will be Friday at 9 a.m. And then next week, I think Tuesday, I'm not going to be able to be here for Tuesday at 5. Calendar. Tuesday the 11th, I won't be here, so it'll be just the next two Fridays, the 7th at 9 a.m. Um, and the 14th at 9 a.m. And then I think we'll pick the Tuesday on the 18th. Okay, thanks for joining. Talk to you later. Bye.